The she-wolf loped along the game trail in the woods in the canine's ground-covering gait. She knew the countryside well, starting from the town, along a stretch of the King's Highway, and the surrounding forest. The beast's form shimmered, and an auburn-haired girl of 16 summers was there uncovering her stash. After brushing dirt and leaves from her clothing, she made her way to the King's Highway. The route had become much safer since the red wolf had begun prowling, as brigands and highwaymen learned to fear the beast of the Black Forest, as they called her. The peasant folk referred to their protector as the red wolf, though they didn't know the creature was born a simple peasant girl named Elizabeth. She had her trusty walking stick and dagger, and hummed as she walked, for there was little left in the wide world she now feared. Her family's home was just off of the main road, and she was not far from the turn-off spot for the footpath to her house. She cleared a bend of thick brush and came upon a group of 15 armed horsemen. They noticed her before she could slip by and hailed her. "Ho there, young mistress," the apparent leader with cold, steel-blue eyes called. "We were just having a brief rest before entering the lovely town of Staufen. I'm the old Bernard, and you are?" "Elizabeth of the Glade, sir," she answered, bowing her head to the noble. "I have come to investigate the stories of a hellish beast that prowls the highway and the Black Forest. The church and the king are quite concerned, you see. Concerned for the safety of the citizens here, and for their souls. You'll find the folk here are hard-working and God-fearing, Lord Bernard," the young woman said cautiously. "I'm sure." He smiled, but the smile held no warmth. "You know, meeting you like this has given me an idea. It seems the creature appears whenever one of the locals has some trouble. So, we'll see if she will show herself." At a nod of his head, 4 of the unhorsed men surrounded Elizabeth. What are you doing?" she yelled out. The knights grabbed her, one grasping each arm and one behind that forced her to her knees. He then relieved her of her walking stick and dagger. The remaining knight in front of her grinned down at her. "You're bait for the she-beast, peasant." Then his fist came at her face. Once, twice, 3 times. The last time she was struck left her vision cloudy and ears ringing. Don't do this," she gasped, then spat out blood. "Please," the man laughed, thinking she was begging him to cease for her safety. He was wrong. She simply didn't want to hurt King's men. She had no compunctions about devouring outlaws and thieves, but nobles and knights. This wouldn't end well for anyone involved, the red wolf growled in her mind. The girl's pain-fueling lupine anger the she-wolf wanted free to retaliate. "She's a tough one," snickered the earl. "The folk of the forest are sturdy stock." The lieutenant kicked Elizabeth in the side, leaving her to scream as she felt her ribs crack. The knight standing behind her shouted, "Ho there, Arnold, that's more than enough. She's just a girl. Just a girl, just a girl." The sentence echoed in Elizabeth's brain as she loosed the reins on the she-wolf inside her, pacing, waiting to be set free. Her hands were now claws, her bare forearms sprouting dark red fur. She still strove to keep her human form, the conflict in her mind keeping her from fully transforming. The lycanthrope's strength surged through her, though, and she jerked free of the warriors. She leaped to her feet and stuck the claws in the lieutenant's underarm, where there was no plate armor. Her talons easily slid past the spaces in the chainmail, and as he reeled in pain, she delivered a front kick that left him on his back. Growling, she whirled to face one of the men who'd held her arms, her mouth full of sharp teeth, the teeth of a predator, which she flashed at him. He drew his sword and swung at her. She dodged it easily, along with another strike. She stepped toward him and backhanded him. leaving a large dent in his metal helmet. He staggered forward, threw up, then finally hit the ground like a sack of bricks. She then took notice of the one who had been behind her, who had admonished the knight who'd struck her so cruelly, and he held out his empty hands to her. "Please, stop," he said gently. He saw her whimper and favor her sigh, which hadn't completely healed as she hadn't changed all the way. "Don't touch me," she snarled. "I can barely." Keep her back. Patches of red fur covered her arms, and her fingers ended in razor-sharp claws. "Keep who back?" he asked. "The wolf." "Are you it, the creature?" questioned Bernard. It had taken him this long sitting in shock to find his voice. Elizabeth growled in response. "Reginald, bring her to me," the Earl ordered. "Begging your pardon, me lord. But did you not see what she just did?" the knight remaining on foot said. "No one else touches me," the girl snarled. "Now be off. I came on the king's behalf. And don't take orders from peasants or wolves. Shoot her." The Earl commanded one of the men carrying a crossbow. He raised the weapon and fired. The bolt buried itself in Elizabeth's chest, narrowly missing her rapidly beating heart. She emitted a blood-curdling wolf's howl, just before a 120-pound she-wolf burst out of her blue work dress and bit the throat out of the closest war-horse. Her wounds now healed in seconds, leaving her fresh and angry. With a clawed hand she plucked the coral from her chest, and the wound closed before the onlooker's eyes. The cloak she wore was still fastened around her throat by a brooch, a gift from her beloved late grandmother. It streamed behind her as she knocked men from saddles and crushed bones. "The net! Get the net!" bellowed the Earl amid the confusion. He jumped down from his mount and grabbed the reins of the unknown horse that had the net he sought. Bernard, assisted by one of his men, threw the net over the rampaging lycanthrope. She yelped and struggled, but couldn't get free of the entangling, tightly woven net. She let forth a long, chilling howl until the Earl swung his mace, smashing the back of her head with it. She finally slumped down, unconscious. Little Red Hood awoke in a cell to find her ankles chained to the wall. She found that she had been clad in a simple linen smock to preserve her modesty, and her red cloak was still fastened around her throat as well. Her head rang, still sore from being bashed by the Earl's mace. She assumed she was in the dungeon of the castle at Staffan. A single window let in some sunlight, and she heard birds singing outside. After some time, the local friar came to her. "Father Brem," she greeted him. "What is happening? Elizabeth, you've been accused of black magic, of consorting with devils to gain your powers. Are you really the Red Wolf?" the middle-aged friar asked. His light brown eyes were wide in concern and a little fear. "Yes, I am. I'm sorry." "Nay, don't be sorry. You've protected these lands better than an army. Child, we'll prove your innocence," he spoke, holding out his hand. She bent to kiss it, but he kissed hers instead. "Be strong, Elizabeth. I'll do what I can to help you through this." He departed, leaving her to sit in a corner of her prison, alone. A guard took away her plate and wouldn't look at her. Sir, please, can you tell me what's to be done with me? There's to be a trial, damsel." He finally spoke, his bearing furtive. "They're putting together a panel or some such shoe." "What did they say?" "Investigate what you are, and if you are of the devil." He would say nothing further and scurried off. Later that evening, the Earl Bernard allowed her parents to see her. Greta and Stan of the Glade smothered her with kisses and questions as to if she was all right. "I am good, Mother. Father, I am so sorry to bring this upon you." "We are going to testify to your goodness tomorrow at the trial," her father told her. Her parents knew of their daughter's abilities. They had restrained her when she first began changing at the full moon, after being attacked by a wicked werewolf named Lazam. He was the same who had eaten her grandmother. But between Elizabeth and a woodcutter they destroyed the lycanthrope. Not everyone bitten or scratched became werewolves. It seemed there had to be something in their genetics to allow the victims to become a shapeshifter. Thankfully, in her early days of lycanthropy, her loving family kept her from running amok and hurting anyone. Even without the help of other werewolves, she learned to control the change. And even change at will. That morning Elizabeth was brought in chains before an assembly in the town square. There were bishops, Lord Bernard, his injured lieutenant, a couple priests, and a judge. They heard the observations of Bernard and Arnold, and heard from the bishops and their fears of the souls of the people touched by the beast of the Black Forest. Friar Brem was testifying on her behalf when a man and woman rushed into the assembly. "What is the meaning of this interruption?" demanded Lord Bernard. "Begging your pardon, sir, that there is something more pressing than the red wolf in the woods," declared the man. "Children are disappearing, Lord," put in the woman. "The handiwork of the beast," opined one of the bishops. "Our son was taken just last night," the man babbled. "There's been disappearances for days of children. It's not the she-wolf we're worried about." Others stepped forward to say that other children were missing and hadn't been found. Bernard demanded if there were any clues. But all that anyone knew was that a few tracks led to the deepest part of the forest, where even the beast didn't travel. It was decided to postpone the rest of Elizabeth's trial so that hunters and soldiers could be sent out to determine what had happened to the missing children. The few that returned reported that a terrible force had taken over the heart of the Black Forest. It was, they declared, a witch. It was, they declared, a witch, a terrible one, with wily followers who aided her endeavors. A hunter discovered that the hag ate children, which fueled her powers and restored her youth for a time. Not long after, Elizabeth was approached by one of the bishops, who promised that the trial would be dropped altogether if she would use her strange powers to rid Stephen and the Black Forest of the witch. She would be released and given anything she needed to accomplish this. She asked for the cross necklace that had been taken from her, and a hunter's outfit. Her signature red cloak completed her ensemble. She was offered a horse but refused, knowing that most animals were spooked by lycanthropes. She knew little of witches or magic, even though she herself was a magical creature, but she was armed with the naive bravery of youth and confidence in her powers. She was given directions of the latest child disappearances and the strange cottage, so she wasted no time. The boy woke up in his cage and rubbed sleepy eyes. Disappointment that he wasn't in a terrible nightmare greeted him as he slowly stood. His sister was already up and doing chores, as the horrible hag rode her day and night, wringing as much work as she could out of the 10-year-old girl. The boy of 8 summers, though, she kept in a small, dank cage, and he was fed several times each day. He ate only half of what he was given. It was mostly sweets, cakes and pies, pastries, jellies, with the occasional heavy soup or stew. "Gretel, is she awake?" the boy asked. "She's gone to fetch water. She doesn't trust me to go outside," the girl answered. Hansel watched his sister. These last few days had left her gaunt and drawn, her brown eyes now looking sunken, while he was cooped up eating rich food. After a day or so, it dawned on the siblings what the witch had planned. Eating poor Hansel, he had saved a chicken bone, which he proffered whenever the hag asked for his hand to feel his finger, with the intention of checking if he was fattening up. Apparently, the hag had poor vision as the ruse worked, ending with her huffing and shaking her head as she flounced away to cook more. If she has so much nice food and a house made out of gingerbread, why does she need to eat us? The boy wondered out loud. I don't know, the girl answered, pausing a moment. She's a sorceress of some sort. She snaps her fingers. The fire starts itself. And she talks to people that ain't there. Mayhap those things come at a price. Both children shuddered at that. The owner of the gingerbread house entered, toting the pails full of water. Good to see you taking initiative, the hack spoke, then handed Gretel a pail. She nearly dropped it from its weight. Yet, the seemingly frail, rickety witch handled both of them easily. Well, boy, how are we doing this day? She asked, turning toward Hansel, who cowered away from the woman when she approached his cage bars. Gaining weight, are we? She poked at him with a gnarled finger. You must have been of a wretched family with how skinny you are. Far. I'll have to make extra for this girl so she won't drop dead. She hobbled away. Gretel rushed to her brother, knelt at the bars. We have to get out of here soon. Hansel, she won't wait much longer. Methinks. But how? I've tried to find a way out of this cell, and I found nothing. He hissed back. I've been looking through the witch's things while cleaning, and there's lots of strange things. Scrolls, books, artifacts. Can you read any of it? Some. The girl whispered. Some spells, I guess. Things I don't understand. Here. She got some of the books and papers and shoved them through the bars of the cage. Have a look at this stuff. Hansel stowed the things out of sight. Elizabeth followed her nose, and the stories of the peasants to parts of the forest she hadn't ventured before. Her lycanthrope senses alerted her to something else besides woodland animals in the forest. Alone in the woods, with something following her. Déjà vu, some would say. She was armed with staff and dagger. She'd been offered a sword or bout, but she was neither a trained warrior nor skilled huntsman. No, she was born and raised of the common folk, the forest people. I know someone's there. Little Red Hood spoke aloud. A short, stunted figure emerged from the bushes. It was less than 4 feet tall yet broad-shouldered, and it spoke in a jarring voice. Wellano, he began. The mistress had told me of creatures like you. Shape changer, he smiled, his red eyes shining from under the hood. I'm not familiar with creatures like you. She snarled. He snickered. Never heard of the fur bulge. Have you? We carry the blood of many, making us strong, human, dwarf, troll. We embody the strongest of each. The fur bulge are dead, wiped out hundreds of years ago. What about you, miss? Where is your pack? And why are you here? Pack, repeated Elizabeth. The only other werewolf she knew she killed for eating her grandmother. He laughed. A child of the wolf mother out alone, huh? I'm looking for a gingerbread house, she interrupted. I won't let you anywhere near my mistress. He lunged at her with a short sword. She sidestepped it, and then her right palm shot out to connect with the middle of his back, making him shoot forward to fall flat on his face. The gnarled man shot up in an instant and uttered an unrecognizable phrase. Numbing pain began in her right hand, and she looked down to find her hand blue and frosted over. It spread, working its way up her elbow. She screamed, shook her afflicted hand, then went wolf. Immediately the icy spell ceased, her right arm returning to normal, snarling. She leapt on the shocked fur-bulged descendant, who squirmed like a greased pig in her clutches. His struggling ended soon after with a satisfying crunch of lupine jaws around his short, thick neck. His struggling ended soon after with a satisfying crunch of lupine jaws around his short, thick neck, Elizabeth spat out dark blood and stood up as a teenage girl. The thing's blood even tasted bad to her. She took up her staff again and continued in what she hoped was the right direction. She was soon rewarded with an attack from more of the fur-bulge creatures. They unleashed freezing and paralysis and fire spells on her, which left her stunned for a good minute. The stunted magic users, both male and female, surrounded her and began stabbing her. Gretel howled, changed to her wolf form and shook off the enchantments. Her outfit had been made to accommodate both her forms, so she leapt forward. She was a blur of red cloak and hunter's colors. The imps were wielding short swords and hatchets. But even so, the wolf outmatched them. She flung herself at them, earning more stabs and slashes, which healed in seconds as she tore arms from sockets, tore throats out. She was careful to keep her heart and neck intact. She knew if her spinal cord was severed or heart punctured, her life would end even in lycanthrope shape. Within minutes the dwarf beings were dead. The red wolf stood over them, panting. The spells and attacks from the fur bulge were weakening her. She needed to eat before she faced this witch. So without further ado, she bounded off in search of prey. She didn't like the taste of the fur bulge. Hansel and Gretel caught some time with the witch outside the hut to pore over the books. Looks like she came from east of the great steppes. Gretel spoke. She was known as Baba Yaga. What's a Baba Yaga? Hansel wondered. I don't know. But she ate people. I think I found something. The boy hissed excitedly. She eats children because it makes her and her spells the most. Potent, suggested his sister. Aye, potent, and their spells. The family had been run out of a neighboring town or Staffen for being pagans, despite the fact that the family had converted to Christianity, being townsfolk. They had no idea how to survive in the forest and so had been starving. We're supposed to stay away from that kind of stuff. We don't have a lot of choices. She's gonna eat us. A scream ripped through the air from outside. Gretel ran to the door, but like always, it was magically sealed. She then went to the window to peer outside. Gretel cried, "The red wolf! The beast is fighting the witch!" The beast of the black forest. The boy exclaimed, "We're saved." But what if she eats us? Gretel interjected. Just before that, the red wolf had caught the hag at the creek that ran by the house, hoping to get the drop on her. Unfortunately, the lycanthrope had never dealt with a witch before, and she was ready for her. Instead of her jaws closing with a snap around the witch's neck, she got a face full of sparks. In retaliation, Elizabeth slashed the witch's middle with her long claws and got a scream in response. How? Baba Yaga cried. You shouldn't be able to touch me. I shall do more than touch you. Eater of human flesh, growled the werewolf, gathering herself for another spring. I am not human. The witch countered, and neither are you. Shape changer. I don't eat children. The wolf snarled as she sprang upon the bony old woman. Aha. Yet your wolf mother, the one you can trace her abilities to. She eats children. Old people, everyone, hissed Baba Yaga in hand-to-hand struggle with the werewolf. The source of your strength is your beast nature. What happens to your family when the wolf cannot be controlled? Be silent, growled Elizabeth, astounded at the hag's physical power. But she also acutely felt the magic beating down upon her. Physically, mentally, emotionally. Without other lycanthropes to learn from, any idea how to research, along with being so tender in age, she had no idea that she herself was a magic creature with built-in abilities and protections. One thing she had no protections for, however, was her youth and inexperience. Baba Yaga continued to taunt her as they struggled and poked fun at the cross necklace she wore. This distracted the lycanthrope enough for the witch to magically pelt her with rocks. Suddenly, the fur of the werewolf stood on end, and both parties were suddenly aware of young voices chanting a spell inside the gingerbread house. The effect it left was the weakening of the witch. The spells she was surrounding the lycanthrope dropped, and her physical prowess plummeted. No, no, she shrieked, and with the last reserves she had left, twisted out of Elizabeth's grip. Before little Red Hood could react, the hag had stumbled up the steps and into the house, slamming the door shut. The shapeshifter was upon the door in a second, beating with taloned fists and staff, to no avail. The enchantments still held on the gingerbread house, it seems. She roared and howled, yet could find no way inside. Inside the magic house, Baba Yaga found Gretel attempting to break the lock on her brother's cage. She screamed at the girl in an unfamiliar language. Both children shrank away in terror. I don't care how skinny you still are, wretch, but I'm eating you today. I don't care how skinny you still are, wretch, but I'm eating you today, you. She whirled on Gretel. Get the fire started, as the girl slowly complied, wondering how they were both going to survive. The witch disappeared to the back room. Gretel, find a way to get outside and run away. The good wolf is out there. She can help you get away. Hansel called to his sister. I'm not leaving you to be eaten by that thing. She hissed back. Keep looking in those books for something else we can use on her. Baba Yaga reappeared gnawing on what appeared to be a cooked human leg. She looked younger and stood straighter. Some leftovers. She cackled. Nothing like a fresh, innocent child, though. That's more potent. The siblings gazed in horror as she grew younger. Her grey hair was now thick and black, the wrinkles on her face now smooth, and her faded eyes glowed red. Now you weak, snivelling little wench. She snarled, then tossed the bone aside. Check the oven and see if it's hot enough. The girl swallowed and shuffled to the huge brick oven, pulled the latch, and swung the heavy door open. The voice of Elizabeth in her human form cut through the thick air of the hut. Children, are you there? We're here, answered Hansel. Save us, please. Be silent, Baba Yaga ordered, and with a gesture the boy found himself unable to speak. You must save yourselves, or at least weaken her so I can get in. Is the oven hot enough yet? Shrieked the witch. She squinted in Gretel's direction. I must boost my power. Realization dawned on the girl. The hag's eyesight was still poor. Gretel played dumb and sobbed that she was afraid of the flames. Stupid girl, screamed Baba Yaga. Unless you built the fire too high, you can just put your hands in and estimate how hot. Like this, fool. Quick as a snake, Gretel shoved the witch in with all her might, slammed the iron door shut, and locked the latch. What followed was a nightmare-inducing scene of Baba Yaga screaming and cursing in 3 different languages before dying in the flames of her own oven. The siblings could feel something being lifted in the house, and Hansel could speak again. The front door flew open, and a teenager dressed in hunting gear sporting a striking red cloak ran inside. Young ones, she cried, looking around the interior. Children, you did it. The witch is dead. With those words, the werewolf felt in her bones it was so. Elizabeth dashed to the cage and easily pulled the lock apart to free the boy. Thank you so much, he gushed, his round brown eyes wide. I'm Hansel, and that's my sister, Gretel. I am Elizabeth. The beast of the black forest we've heard about. Gretel spoke. Are you really a wolf? Sometimes, the adolescent answered. We've got to get you out of here. The witch had servants who were nearly as dangerous as she. I fought them the whole way here. Before the children would depart, however, They filled their pockets with gold and jewels. It was more wealth than their poor family had ever seen, curiosity getting the better of her. Gretel broke off a piece of the magic house and ate it. It really was gingerbread, and it was delicious. I will get us home. But you must trust me, Elizabeth told the children grimly. Hansel, being younger, clutched at the lycanthrope's hand. Those dwarf things could be anywhere. It wasn't long before the rustling and hissing proclaimed that they were being followed. Elizabeth snatched the bow up and instructed the girl to wrap her arms about her neck. Her form shifted into her wolf self, and she was off like a shot. Hansel in her arms, and Gretel clinging to her neck. Part of her striking red cloak flapped free, streaming in the breeze as the werewolf dashed along. Many pairs of eyes watched this strange spectacle of a young lycanthrope dashing along to save Kai. Children, to strangers that she didn't even know. An explosion went off beside Elizabeth, causing her to bounce away. Another happened right in front of her, and she nearly took a spill. Righted herself and kept going. The siblings screamed at the magic. With the witch gone, they hoped their clash with spells was over. Then the physical attacks began. Arrows whizzed from the underbrush. And then Elizabeth caught a throwing knife heading for her heart with her free hand and kept going. At last, the adolescent shapeshifter recognized the part of the woods she was in and poured on more speed. That's when, in desperation, the now leaderless servants of Baba Yaga tackled her, biting, stabbing, and tearing at her. The siblings were thrown to the ground and found themselves riveted in horror at the stunted creatures mercilessly combating the werewolf, 8 strong. Gretel snatched up a piece of wood from the forest floor, struck at a fir bulge, and received a hold spell in return. Now, she found herself unable to move or speak and whimpered in terror as mayhem happened all around her. Hansel uttered a spell he'd read in one of the witch's books, which hit 2 of the servants with jagged pieces of ice that penetrated their simple leather armor with ease. He immediately felt the drop in his strength as the spell used his energy to fuel itself. Meanwhile, Elizabeth tore several of the fur bulge descendants apart. She ripped out throats with her canines, disemboweled with her talons, and pulled off arms. Within minutes, the 3 minions left beat a hasty retreat to the deeper part of the woods. Gretel felt the spell holding her dissipate, then threw her arms around the werewolf's neck again. Elizabeth caught the bullwhip in her arms and bounded off again, painfully aware her wounds were healing more slowly than normal. It seemed she had reached the limits of her powers, and it was a hard pill for an adolescent with such gifts to swallow. She staggered into Staffan amid shocked townspeople and guards, the children landing nimbly on their feet while the lycanthrope fell to the ground. The red wolf has returned. A street merchant cried out, and the cry was taken up by others. The master of the town rushed from the town hall, with the bishops and Earl Bernard on his heels. Little Red Hood had by this time changed to her human shape and gotten shakily to her feet. She looked around warily at all the folk crowding around her and the children, who shrank back to their protector. Her thick, dark red hair blended with the scarlet of her cloak. Her hazel eyes wide in her young face as she awaited the authorities. "Is the witch dead?" Lord Bernard demanded when he reached them. "Aye, she's dead," Elizabeth answered. "The red wolf saved us," exclaimed Gretel. Then the accusations against Elizabeth of the glade are hereby dropped, declared the master of the burg, as a direct representative of His Majesty the King. "My power supersedes yours." Bernard snapped testily. "I will need verification that the woods and area is now safe. Beyond the Black Forest you'll find an empty gingerbread cottage," the lycanthrope spoke, "and you'll find the bodies of the hag servants along the way, or at least evidence of their struggle." The Earl started to open his mouth, took notice of all the angry townspeople who, while hardy knights, handily outnumbered his troops 10 to 1, then smiled at the master of the burg. Well then, men will be sent to see all this. In the meantime, all accusations against Elizabeth are dropped, provided she respects the authority of the church and the king. The young woman held his steely gaze, and despite her youth and inexperience, knew that the earl couldn't be trusted and would likely be trouble later on down the road. For now, though, she bowed her head in acquiescence. She also arranged for Hansel and Gretel's aggrieved parents to be sent for, and a welcome place for the family in Stuffen, where witches treasure or pagan, or newly converted or not, they wouldn't starve again. That day ended with a new cheer. All hail the Red Wolf, protector of the Black Forest. All hail the children who vanquished the witch. And so ends the tale of how Little Red Riding had saved Hansel and Gretel, and how that she, as the Red Wolf, started her career. Elizabeth first appears in my Little Red Riding Hood short story featured in my book, Ghastly's Book of Fairy Tales, published on Amazon. Hope you enjoy, and thanks for watching.